Hello, everyone. Bryce Koon here with Swarm Talk. We're going to figure this out one day or not. We're going to figure out how to do this. My name is Bryce Koon, Swarm Talk, previewing Georgia Tech against Wake Forest here on tonight's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
We welcome you in here on a wonderful Thursday evening, action-packed conversation all week long. If you've missed it and you're over on the YouTube or whether you're in our podcast feed as well, make sure you check that out. Auburn, Georgia previews, everything. Auburn A&M, we had a great preview of that. Will and I were able to knock it out this earlier today. Appreciate that. Obviously, we have our college football live shows every single Monday and Wednesday night at this time. Georgia Tech shows Sunday nights and Thursday nights. We're going to have a Tuesday show sprinkled in, pre-recorded as well going forward. But hey, welcome in. Welcome into the chat. I want to go ahead and give Ralph's in the background, Will's in the background. I want to give a shout out to my man, Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob has been working hard. He's been not hardly working. He's been moonlighting as the Crowded Booth intern. And it goes, as he said, the Discord, great plug. You should join the Discord if you dare. This week, Dr. Bob has taken a medical board exam, had a full week of hospital duties, has 2 midterms and a presentation for a master's degree. So let's go ahead and just give a round of applause for Dr. Bob putting in the work, still finding time to take in some of the best content that you're going to find on your Yellow Jackets on the interwebs. Bryce Koon here, talking Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. I hinted at this earlier if you watched last night's live show. I do, and I'm going to spoil it. I think Georgia Tech can win this football game. I think they can go on the road and they beat Wake Forest. I think there is a recipe for success heading into this weekend. On the road, it's going to be a tough environment. It's going to be, to me, one of those things that you're going to have to sit there and say, you got to do a lot of things right. But before we get to it, you're going to see the ad later on here in tonight's show. Big shout out. Today, we're able to get a fantastic sponsorship with Dr. Squatch. All you got to use, if you want to smell nice, if you want to smell like Bryce, go ahead and clip that. Or even smell like Ralph. I don't know if you want to smell like Will. If you want to do any of those things, what you got to do here is you got to use code Bryce Koon. Very easy. Just my name. At checkout, or a link in there is going to be down in the description below, or if it's in the Discord as well. $10 off your order of $10 or more. So if you spend like $15 on soap and shampoo, it's going to be knocked down to $5. That's a great deal. Ralph can attest to this. I can attest to it. Literally have been using the stuff for 2 years. Like it's actual. I can say this is a good product, and you should check it out. So we're gonna continue to roll in that dough per se, but it's a great partnership. We're excited to be with them, and we can't wait for it as well. There's 3 things I want to talk about in tonight's show that I think are very applicable because I think when you see what this team has done through the first 3 weeks of the season, we had a great show on it Tuesday night, and a lot of you were able to tune in after the fact, and I appreciate that. Of this team's way better. They're 1-2. The record doesn't reflect exactly what this team, I think, has been able to do. And so I want to talk about that tonight. I want to talk about 3 things that if Georgia Tech's going to win this football game, and I think they can, this is what they've got to do. So, Ralph, let's put up their number 1. This is, one of the biggest matchups, I think, coming into this game. You got a Wake Forest offensive line that has given up 10 sacks already. Now, Mitch Griffiths is a talented quarterback. He's been able to do some things for them. There's a reason they're 3-0 entering this ball game. But the offensive line's not one of them. It feels like they've kind of done it in spite of that. 10 sacks through 3 games. You can do the math right there per game. They're giving up at least 3 sacks a game. That being said, Georgia Tech's front 7, ladies and gentlemen, kids and coaches, children of all ages, the offensive line for Wake Forest is going up against a defensive line that has registered 1 sack so far this season. Now, South Carolina State, we've talked about this, posed a different challenge in the sense of running more of an option-style offense, not giving you a ton of opportunities to get after the quarterback. That being said, you got to change that number. Like, you've got to at least hit that average of what Wake Forest is giving up to be able to win this football game. I think overall, when you look at this front seven, obviously you have missed Sylvain Yonjuan. You have missed, Keon White. We talked about this on Tuesday night. You lost a lot. Like, you lost Charlie Thomas, you lost Ace Ely, and then you obviously lost Keon White. Keon White's making an impact right now in the NFL. Charlie Thomas was, a kind of a spark plug guy that was able to just be a game changer for you. And Ace Ely was a guy who played a ton of football, a multi-year starter at the Power 5 level. You've entered in kind of this front seven where I think there's potential. It's just who's going to be able to capitalize. And I think in order for Georgia Tech to reach the goal of getting to a bowl game, for me, you've got to be able to capitalize against a team that has a weak offensive front. You've got to be able to get pressure on Mitch Griffiths as well. I mean, looking at Griffiths' stats and kind of what he's been able to do and what they've been able to do passing the ball, this is an offense that is averaging 5.9 yards per play. That cannot continue. That can't continue into this game. Now, Wake struggled with Old Dominion, and we're going to talk about that. They've scored 11 touchdowns on offense so far this year. Going into that passing game, they're averaging around 280 passing yards per game. Per attempt, too, is almost 9 yards, 8.7 yards they're averaging per attempt. So they're willing to push the ball down the field. So if I'm this front seven, and I'm going to talk about this, if I'm Andrew Thacker, you got to get creative. We're going to talk about the coaching effect later on in the show. But if I am Andrew Thacker in this defense and I'm this, defensive coaching staff, what's been working the first 3 games has not worked from a pass rush and, moving the pocket against quarterbacks. It hasn't worked. Plummer was relatively obviously clean, and it really allowed for Louisville to come back in that game and not only come back, but also just be dominant, in the second half. This game against Ole Miss, we talked about it, in our preseason. Going into this game, I thought it would be a problem if you couldn't get to the quarterback, and we saw that on Saturday, that it was going to be an issue. So if Georgia Tech wants to go on the road and win this football game, you've got to create chaos. You've got to get creative with your blitzes. We're going to need to see some stunts from the interior, bringing the edge guy on the inside, moving the tackle outside, creative linebacker blitzes. Utilize some of these athletes that you have. It's going to be, just for me, this is a matchup you got to watch, because if Georgia Tech's front seven is getting dominated and a Wake Forest team that I mentioned, they're averaging 280 yards in the air per game, and then rushing yards wise, they're only averaging 3.8. And I don't know about you. I think that when you look at this team, you look at this game and this front seven, if you can keep Wake Forest to under 4 yards a carry, I think you got a good shot, because then you're going to put it on Mitch Griffiths to really beat you with his arm. Now, that creates a situation where I think you have an opportunity where this secondary is going to have to step up. Like, that's going to be something that you kind of got to watch, and we're going to keep an eye on that throughout the game. But that being said, Tech can go and win this game. This matchup, the front seven against the offensive line, is something you're going to have to keep an eye on. If it doesn't happen, if they do not get a push, if they're not moving Griffiths around in the pocket, if they're not forcing the quarterback to do some things that are maybe uncomfortable to him, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a really long day for the quarterback to be able to pick on a Georgia Tech secondary that I think we can honestly say is a weakness right now for this team. So that's kind of the first topic there. Front seven against this offensive line has got to be better. It just, hands down, it has to be better. Now let's roll on to the second topic of conversation here that for me is just as imperative. And Ralph, you throw up that second banner there that we've got. Kind of key number 2 here is capitalizing in the red zone. Ralph did crunch the numbers for me, and courtesy of our great partnership with websites and internet that we have. When you look at this red zone efficiency, okay, so here's 2 numbers I wanted to bring you. First of all, it's not about just getting points in the red zone. It's also about getting 6 while you're in the red zone. Look, you can kick field goals all day long, and I'm not saying that there's certain chances and certain things where you don't need to take the points. But overall, this game's going to be decided, I think, by who's able to punch it in. So far, Georgia Tech has been very, very good in that department. Tech's gotten to the red zone 16 times this season. They're at a 63% clip of scoring a touchdown, 10 of 16 of getting in the end zone. Wake Forest, ladies and gentlemen, they've gotten in nearly the same amount of times, 15 times into that red zone. They've just scored a touchdown 5 times. That says a lot to me about the ability, when you talk about game planning, you talk about, the ability to draw stuff up inside the 20-yard line. Bussner, Faulkner, Chris Winkie, Brent Key, this offensive coaching staff has found something there more often than not. Now, you can pick and choose different situations where you felt like they should have done different things, but taking a look at the big picture here, 10 of 16 is 10 times better, it feels like, than 5 of 15. I think that could come up in this game, being able to be creative offensively enough to get your playmakers involved. Obviously, people saw the good news today that Chase Lane is progressing well. He could be available on an emergency basis. Personally, I don't know how much I'm buying into that because, the guy had obviously a broken foot. When you talk about something there, whether it's one of the bigger bones, whether it's one of the smaller bones, emergency basis, one, that's something we've heard around this program, and it really means that you're not available. I don't think Chase Lane's available. I don't see, any type of situation where you're going to, for me, I don't think you're going to see any type of situation where he plays in this game. So that being said, you got to still be creative. Jamal Haynes is going to have to be utilized in the red zone. When you take into account all of the opportunities and the weapons, Eric Singleton, Dylan Leonard, Brett Seether, you have at the tight end position. Obviously, Malik Rutherford on the outside, Christian Leary, Jamal Haynes, Trey Cooley. The weapons and being able to spread out what you're going to be able to do inside the red zone. So far, I don't feel necessarily very comfortable with saying Wake Forest can stop that. Now, going back to this, red zone touchdowns and scores. Now, Wake Forest has limited their opponents, have only got to they've only gotten in to the red zone 7 times this season. They've only scored touchdowns 2 times. That being said, the level of competition that Wake Forest has played, they haven't faced an offense with what Georgia Tech's going to do. This is an offense in Georgia Tech, ladies and gentlemen, that we forget because we get upset about the loss, and that's okay. We're fans. We're going to get upset about the loss. But, ladies and gentlemen, I got this right here. It's a team that has started offensively really, really hot, like really, really well. Jackets are averaging 35 points a game, 513 yards of offense through their first 3 games. That's against, and I said this multiple times, that's against an FCS opponent. It's against a top 40 team in Louisville, and I think we can all say a top 15 team in Ole Miss, top 20 team at the very most. So 2 top 40 teams, one of those being inside kind of that top 15 to top 20 range. And you've averaged 513 yards of offense after really not having an identity at all. So that is something that's been very quickly changed. And I think we've also seen the play calling, the utilization of your talent translate into the red zone. I mean, 10 of 16 is something that, it's going to be very interesting. Haynes King, we're going to talk about him as well. To me, and I saw On3 came out with this report, and I completely agree with it. He's been so far 3 weeks in the top 10 of most impactful transfers for his team. With what Georgia Tech needed at the quarterback position, hands down, this is true. King leads the ACC in almost nearly every passing statistic. Touchdowns with 9, yards with 910, yards per game at a tick over 300 at 303. But I think what this does give us is it gives us the impression that Georgia Tech's just kind of slinging the ball around. And that's also something they're not really doing in the red zone as well. They're using a lot of quick hitters, the wide receiver screens, Cooley and Jamal Haynes as well. I think Wake Forest is going to have to tackle very well against this Georgia Tech offense to be able to stop them, to be able to put some pressure, over that. I think that it feels like with this Georgia Tech offense so far this season, if you don't wrap up against them, it's going to go for 20 plus. Like that's just, it kind of feels like that. They've got playmakers, guys that can make some moves after the catch or after contact. So I think that it's going to be, I don't know. That's just kind of where I sit with that. Now, you mentioned, and we talked about this, offensively inside that red zone, you got to be good. We talk about the coaching and everything, and I think that when you get into a situation between the red zone and you get into being able to just put it in the end zone consistently, it tells you that your offense is, one, comfortable with the play calling, but it also tells you that they are executing it at a high clip. And so those numbers speak for themselves. I think that Georgia Tech's going to have a nice day there in the red zone and be able to consistently do what they need to do. I think they face better defenses than what Wake Forest is going to be employed out there. I think Wake Forest is a well-coached team. I'll talk about that in my final thoughts and predictions before we get out of here. But overall, I think this has a chance to be something that's really, really nice. They struggled against Old Dominion in this category last week. And so overall, I think this is good. But we got two more topics. But before we do, my man Ralph is going to run a fantastic ad from one of our newest sponsors.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell. Titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. We're excited to welcome Dr. Squatch as a part of the crowded booth and everything. Make sure, once again, you use code Bryce Koon or a link that's going to be down in the bio. You can find on Discord. We're going to have it on the social media channels as well. $10 off your order of $10 or more. It's a fantastic deal. We're excited to continue with that. Let's get to this last effect. And this is not necessarily anything that is on the field related, but I think that this is where, and we're going to call it the Brent Key effect, the Brent Key effect of what this team wants to do, coaching wise, what they're able to kind of bring up. And I just think altogether, this team is going to have an edge to them. Key hasn't seemed, pip, pip, cheerio in the press conferences this week. I don't know if it's just, the absolute horrible questions that are being asked, or if it is just, not being able to really be where you want to be as a program. Because once again, we talked about this. This is not, you can't go results oriented. You've got to be process oriented with this Georgia Tech program. The process is getting way better offensively, but defensively, you could probably be 2-1. And I think you probably should be 2-1. I think we could fairly say that, if you were a little bit cleaner on both sides of the ball. Last season, Georgia Tech was sixth best team in the country in turnover margin. They were plus 11, and it really allowed them to finish with that 5-7 record. Through 3 games, Wake Forest has turned the ball over 5 times, with 3 of those being returned for touchdowns. That's not something that's very good. That's just not very good. It's 5 turnovers, 21 points spotted to an FCS team, and then 2 defenses that they've played that ranked about 100th and 109th in total defense. Old Dominion, and Ralph, you can remind me, I don't remember the FCS team they've played in Wake Forest, but I know it's Old Dominion and Vanderbilt, the two FBS teams that they've played. I don't remember the FCS team. That being said, we talked about creativity defensively for this group and what they're going to have to do going forward. I think that defensively, you've got to be creative. And this is where the Brent Key, Elon, hands down, don't take the intern spot there, Mr. Singh. Don't take the intern spot. That's all Dr. Bob's. That being said, and Dr. Bob just following it up right there, fantastic. That being said, you got to be creative with what you want to do defensively. So the Brent Key effect, that we know that Key is a guy that wears his emotions on his shoulder, on his sleeve, on his face. He's not going to hide that. I think that there's a little sense of being ticked off about how the first 3 weeks have gone, in the sense of not that people outside the building thought that you should win these first couple games, but the fact that you should have at least won one of them. And you probably should have won the Louisville game and should be 2-1 heading into this game and 1-0 in the ACC, and you're not. That being said, Tech's in a position that, like when they went up to Pitt and they won that game, I don't think that Wake Forest is as good as that Pitt team was. But what I'm saying is this is the type of game where Georgia Tech could make this ugly. They could make it nasty, and it could turn into an ugly win. But it's a win. And it gets that foot going forward, as then you could come back home against a Bowling Green team, and you would have a winning record for legitimately the first time. And I don't think I'm wrong in this. We were looking at this. The last time that Georgia Tech had a winning record is in the Paul Johnson era. That's the last time they had a winning record in a season. They did start the season off a couple of years ago with a win, but you played one game. I don't count that as a winning record. I'm talking about inter-season of being able to have a winning record. So if you can win this one, you win Bowling Green, you're 3-2. That being said, the coaching aspect, Brent Key's taken his lumps. He's taken some topsy-turvy moments, and look, he's been outcoached by one. Jeff Brom, who's been doing this for a very long time, and another one in Lane Kiffin that is one of the best, if not the best, offensive mind in the country with how creative he can be with his playmakers. That being said, Dave Clawson's a really good coach, a well-respected coach. In the preseason, when I looked at this game, I didn't really know what Wake Forest was going to be. Obviously, they lost Sam Hartman, who's a massive piece, not only of their offense, but is showcasing one of the reasons why I think all three of us picked Notre Dame last night in our predictions to be able to beat Ohio State. That being said, it's going to be something going forward with what this team has to do is you have to learn from the first 3 weeks of mistakes. And one of those things is you want to be able to turn it around right now against Wake Forest. And a game that you are more than capable of winning, a game that you can go up there and win. I just think the Brent Key effect is going to have to take over. The passion, the intensity that he was able to utilize as an interim coach, you can still utilize that. It's going to be a combination, though, of being able to utilize aggression, competitive edge, competitive fire, but not mixing it so much where the emotions take over. The great coaches in college football have been able to do that. And here's two examples, one that Tech fans will not like. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart have both been able in their tenure to be able to channel energy, channel aggression, passion for what they do, and keep it in a positive light. A guy that coached, 10 miles from where my apartment is right now wasn't able to do that. And Ed Orgeron, he's a guy that had the passion, couldn't channel it to be consistent. So I'm not saying that we're comparing Brent Key to any of those guys, but there is a place in this game for overly emotional coaches and guys that wear that. And I think Key really cares about this program. I think that he has a burning desire to see this team. And I think there's an embarrassment factor for him that they were as bad as they were. For this game, what does it mean? It means that I think that this defense is going to come out a little bit ticked off, especially a front seven that is undervalued, a front seven that hasn't lived up to the standard of what, these teams want them to be. I think that you're going to have to be aggressive. You're going to have to be creative. Buster Faulkner is going to be creative, but defensively, Andrew Thacker, unleash the hounds. Like, you're going to have to get after this quarterback, because I think that 3 games in, that your secondary is not the strong suit. So knowing that, you've got to get creative, and you've got to get some type of pressure, because you can't just rush 3 or rush 4 and hope that your defense can, your secondary can sit back there and make plays. I just don't feel like that's a winning recipe for this team, especially in this game, and a game that I think that you should go up there and be able to win. I know Vegas guys, and I got Will and Ralph in the background. I don't even remember what the odds. I think it's 8. I think it's an 8-point favorite or a 7-point favorite Wake Forest is in this game. So about a touchdown favorite. You can go win this game. This offensive line has not been good enough against worse competition to where this could be a game that instills confidence into, and we got 4.5 points there, CJ says, for Wake. If you are Brent Key, you're smelling blood in the water with a team that doesn't block well. And as a defensive tackle, as a defensive end, as a blitzing linebacker, as a defense as a coordinator, and Andrew Thacker, this is one that you got to get up for. You got to say, in my opinion, if you're not getting up for this one against a team that has struggled, I don't know when you're going to be able to get that excited for a game or a potential opportunity in the rest of the season. This is a chance to really stake your claim. 1-3 would really, really hurt you to be able to have to do that. That's going to be something that's very, very interesting. So I think the Brent Key effect is going to have to come out in full force. Ralph, let's get to the predictions and final thoughts here. I'm seeing CJ put in there it's a 4.5-point spread. Ralph, I got you in the background. Is that correct? Has it gone down to a 4.5-point spread? So I think this started out as an 8-point spread or 7 and has dwindled down. I believe so. But final thoughts and predictions here. Preseason, I thought that Wake Forest would win this game. I trusted Dave Clawson more than I trusted Brent Key. Remember, this was back in August. Knowing what we know through 3 weeks, this is a game that I think Georgia Tech goes up there and wins. I think that they're able to go into Winston-Salem, a place that can be raucous, but is not really known for being a hostile environment. I think they're able to control the tempo, And just overall, I think that Georgia Tech is better suited to try to outscore this Wake Forest team than they did last week against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a way better football team. That being said, I don't think Wake Forest can keep up. I don't trust Wake Forest's offensive line. Even though Georgia Tech has only registered 1 sack this year, Wake Forest is giving up an average of 3 per game. If you don't leave this game with at least 2 sacks, then I'm very, very concerned. And we'll talk about that on Sunday night. But my final thoughts and prediction on this one, and then we're going to get to the comments here over the last 5 minutes or so. The final thoughts and prediction, I think Georgia Tech wins this game. I think your final score for the Jackets is winning this one 33-21. I think that they actually win this one by double digits. I think they can. I think that this is a team that needs a win. They need this. And I think the Brent Key effect, the passion is able to come out here on the road, and you beat a team that is really, and CJ said right there, this isn't the 2021 ACC championship Wake Forest team. This is a much different football team. Dave Clawson's a great coach, well-respected, had nothing but rave reviews to say about this Georgia Tech team. You got to be able to protect the football, and you've got to be able to do some things that you haven't done this season. Can you do that? I do believe you can. I believe you can. So I think I got this one, Ralph, what was it? 33-21. I think I said the final score was. So I think Tech wins this one by double digits. That's kind of where we sit. Now, look, you still got to do some things, and we're going to get to some of the comments right here. Let's rock and roll with a couple of the comments before we get out of here on a Thursday evening. Dr. Bob, Haynes King and the stretch play in the run game will be big. I heard Griffiths might be banged up for Wake Forest. If he is, that is a big storyline, Dr. Bob, coming into this season. That's the kind of stuff that an intern does right there. Let's keep it rocking and rolling with these comments. But as a proud GT alum, summa cum laude, more importantly, as a Credit Booth moonlighting intern, I will be in Winston-Salem on Saturday night. Obligatory Go Jackets into hell with Georgia. Dr. Bob, boots on the ground. Going to be giving us that content there from there. Stan, appreciate you, Stan. Dr. Squatch is the GOAT. You're the GOAT, Stan. Brennan Simpkins, been using Squatch for a while. Cool to see you're sponsored. Once again, you got to check it out. If you haven't already, Crowded Booth sponsorship. Bryce Koon's the code. Very, very easy. I'm going to link it in the bio after this is over, and you can use it for $10 off your order of any time. The weather might be a factor here in central North Carolina. Tropical weather system is sitting off the coast and may come in this week. I think that that'll be something, how does the Georgia Tech passing offense hold up with a nasty day in the weather? We'll see. We'll see. Chase Fletcher, defense needs to be able to perform better against ACC teams if we're going to make a bowl. Really need a killer mentality moving forward. Let's go break their will. I agree. And Chase, I'll even add on top of this. This is a must-win game if you're going to go to a bowl game. You got to win this football game. Like you can't lose and think that you're going to get to a bowl game. It's just really, to me, too much to ask to upset teams that are probably really, really better than you. So I think that Chase, in this sense, you've hit the nail on the head. They've got to be better. And when you kind of get into the long term of this season, yeah, you have to keep it rolling with a couple more before we get out of here for the night. The spread is Wake by 4.5 points. I keep saying it'll come down to our special teams. Hope GT can kick field goals. Agree with you. Special teams going to have to be solid, especially kick coverage and stuff like that. Let's keep it rolling here. GT Buzz, Wake won't be able to stop our offense. Defense just needs to hold into field goals. We talked about it. Look, that's what defenses have done against this Wake Forest offense. 5 of 15, and I'll add this, 5 of 15. Folks, they're 12 of 15 in the red zone in scoring. That means 7 times they've had to settle for field goals. I like those numbers. I like those odds. A couple more comments here we're going to get to. I think we got Zach. If we can get some pressure in this game and win, it's a good mental thing for the defense, then come back home against Bowling Green and build off all that momentum. Exactly. This is that first step. You got to be able to put your foot on some solid ground, and I think you could do that with this one. Let's keep it rolling. Rick, thanks for the insight. Love the show. Rick, appreciate you tuning in here on a fantastic Thursday night. I see the comment real quick, Ralph. We'll flash that one as the last one. Last time we played them at Winston-Salem there from CJ, I was there in 2010. The last time Georgia Tech played this game, and Ralph was over there in stats and research doing this before, was, what, Ralph, was it 2017? You said? 2017. Our boy Taquan Marshall was playing quarterback for the Jackets that day as the Georgia Tech team won that one by over a touchdown, I believe. So that's the last time these two teams have faced off, which is kind of crazy. 31. We got a final score of 31, and Ralph's going to just put it in the private chat, I believe. I don't know what the score was. It's going to be a long game if we can't tackle. Yeah, CJ, you're exactly right. You got to be able to tackle the discipline, and that's kind of where the coaching comes in. They really need it. 38-24. They won by 2 touchdowns, just in fact, back there in 2017 against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Let me know your thoughts. If you're watching this after the fact, we appreciate you. Also, the wind is supposed to be 15 to 25 miles per hour. But Dr. Bob, make sure you get up there, with the metal rod and you test out that storm chasing abilities. We want to make sure that you are getting the full experience there at Wake Forest. Bryce Koon, this is Swarm Talk. We're presented by Section 103. We've got a great sponsorship with them. You can use code CrowdedBooth for 10% off of your first order. I got the Brent Key hoodie coming in and a Haynes King jersey, T-shirt jersey that we're going to be bringing in and we'll be wearing on the show next week, hopefully. So it's going to be a lot of fun to continue to roll with the new merchandise, NIL deals that they're putting together. Shout out to Section 103, some of the best. I genuinely think it's the best Georgia Tech gear that you could be wearing. I don't think that they're, from what Adidas puts out there, just lackluster. I think Section 103 is cornered that market. We're going to roll out. We're going to talk to you next time. We will be once again live on Sunday evening, same time, same place. Make sure you join us in a reaction show, and we're going to talk about it. Unless Ralph wants to stay up till midnight on Saturday and do a live reaction, I don't know if we'll do that. Probably not. I'll be a little too tired. But we'll probably just go on Sunday. That's probably what we'll do. My name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't already. If you're listening to this on the radio, if you're listening in podcast form, we appreciate it as well. Throughout East Alabama and West Georgia, WQEE. We will catch you next time. My name is Bryce Koon. We will see you next time here on an episode of Swarm Talk with The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. Coming on The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.